Sweetheart, the charity office is 2 blocks down.
I have a 9:30 meeting on the 30th floor.
A meeting? That's precious. The executive floor isn't for whatever this is.
Check the visitor list. Whitfield.
Honey, I'm not typing one letter for you. This lobby is for clients, not beggars on wheels.
Give that folder back.
This thing? Oops, it slipped. All over my clean floor. Pick it up if you can reach.
You'll remember this morning for a very long time.
Is that a threat? Adorable. Dennis, roll her out before she stands my lobby.
Ma'am, I need you to leave now.
Stop! Oh, get your hands off that chair. She owns 51% of us.
1 hour of laughter. One sentence that ended a career. Have you ever been judged worthless by someone who had no idea who they were talking to? 3 hours earlier, the city was still waking up.
Morning light spilled gray and gold over Lake Michigan. Wind rattled the windows of a quiet apartment on the 12th floor of a brick building in Lincoln Park. Inside, the smell of fresh coffee drifted from the kitchen. Irene Whitfield sat in front of her closet, deciding who she wanted to be that day. On the left hung the armor. Tailored suits in charcoal and navy, Italian silk blouses, the kind of clothes that made bankers sit up straighter when she rolled into a room.
On the right hung a plain gray blazer, 10 years old, soft at the elbows, a faded thrift store find she had never been able to throw away. She reached right. 10 years ago, Irene had been the sharpest analyst on her floor at a Manhattan investment firm. 28 years old, first in her family to finish college, the woman who found value where everyone else saw risk. Then came a rainy Tuesday, a delivery truck running a red light, and 14 hours of surgery.
She woke up to a doctor explaining that she would never walk again. She also woke up to silence. The firm sent flowers, then a settlement, then nothing. Colleagues stopped calling. Doors that used to swing open now had steps in front of them, in every sense. So Irene built her own door. From her kitchen table, she started a small fund with her savings and her settlement money. She studied companies nobody believed in and bet on people nobody noticed. One good call became 10. 10 became a portfolio that quietly outperformed half of Wall Street.
She never gave interviews. She never posted photos.
Her name lived in legal filings and wire transfers, not in magazines. Bankers knew the name Whitfield Capital. Almost none of them knew the woman behind it. Rolled instead of walked. 7 days ago, in a conference room with Walter Brennan, the retiring chairman of Meridian Capital, she signed the largest deal of her life. 51% of the firm, controlling interest. The ink was dry, the wire had cleared, and the announcement was scheduled for Monday at 10 in the morning, which gave her one window. One Monday morning where she could enter that building as nobody at all. Her grandmother used to say, "You learn everything about a house by how it treats the stranger at the door." Irene wanted to see Meridian's lobby through the eyes of every client, every cleaner, every kid showing up for an interview in borrowed shoes. Before her name went on the wall, she wanted the truth. So she pulled on the old gray blazer, tucked a leather folder beside her hip, and rolled out into the Chicago wind. The cold came straight off the lake, sharp enough to taste. Salt trucks rumbled past. A bus hissed at the corner. Her gloved hands worked the wheels in a steady rhythm she had perfected over 10 years, block after block, until the tower rose in front of her. Meridian Capital filled 40 floors of glass and steel on Wacker Drive. Brass letters gleamed above revolving doors. Through the glass, a waterfall wall shimmered down polished stone, and the lobby glowed like the inside of a jewelry box. Behind the front desk stood Candace Pruitt, head receptionist, 11 years with the firm. She arranged the white orchids beside her monitor every morning at 8, aligning each stem like a soldier. She knew every executive's coffee order and every partner's wife by name. She also ran the lobby like a velvet rope. When a man in a cashmere coat pushed through the doors, her smile bloomed on cue. "Good morning, Mr. Sutton. Wonderful to see you." When a bike courier tracked slush across the marble, that smile died. A manicured finger pointed him to the service entrance without a single word. At 9 in the morning, she glanced at her watch, then at the revolving doors. What she saw made her sigh loudly enough for the espresso bar to hear. A black woman in a scuffed wheelchair was working her way through the side entrance. A chrome advertising sign blocked the bottom of the access ramp. The woman's blazer was old. Her gloves were worn. Her wheels left 2 thin lines of melted snow across the gleaming floor. Candace looked at those tracks the way most people look at a stain. Then she pressed her lips together, leaned toward the desk microphone, and got ready to protect her lobby. The chrome sign stood at the bottom of the access ramp like a guard. "Wealth has an address," it announced in elegant black letters. Irene almost laughed at that. She gripped the cold edge of the sign and dragged it aside, inch by inch. The revolving doors kept spinning for people who never broke stride. Nobody stopped, nobody helped. A man in a camel coat stepped over her front wheel like she was construction debris. By the time she rolled into the lobby, her shoulders burned and her gloves were soaked. Warm air washed over her, scented with orchids and espresso. The waterfall wall murmured against polished stone. 40 feet above, a chandelier scattered light across the marble like dropped coins. It was beautiful. It was also a lobby with exactly 1 working ramp, and someone had used it as advertising space. She rolled toward the front desk, tires squeaking faintly on the polished floor. Each squeak made heads turn. A cluster of young associates by the elevators lowered their voices. A silver-haired couple on the leather sofas looked at her, then through her, the way people look at weather. Candace Pruitt watched her come the whole way. She did not stand. She did not smile. She propped her chin on laced fingers and let Irene cross 60 feet of marble in silence. Like a critic watching a show she had already decided to hate. Irene stopped at the desk. The counter rose nearly to her chin. From the other side, she could barely be seen at all. She knew that feeling well. A world built for standing people made sitting people invisible.
"Good morning," Irene said. "Irene Whitfield. I have a 9:30 meeting on the 30th floor." That was when Candace delivered the line the whole lobby would remember. "Sweetheart, the charity office is 2 blocks down. We don't do handouts here." For a heartbeat, nothing. Then a snort of laughter escaped someone at the espresso bar. A young associate elbowed another. Phones drifted upward, casual and hungry. Irene kept her voice level. "I'm not looking for the charity office. The 30th floor, please. The meeting starts at 9:30. A meeting. Candace's tone made the words sound borrowed. "That's precious. The 30th floor is the executive level, honey. Board members. Partners." Her eyes traveled from Irene's knit hat down to the wet wheels. "Whatever this is." "Check the visitor list. Whitfield. Whitfield.
Candace did not so much as glance at her monitor. She inspected her manicure instead. "Honey, I'm not typing 1 letter for you. This lobby is for clients, not beggars on wheels." The words landed louder than she probably intended. Or exactly as loud as she intended. Either way, the espresso machine hissed into the silence. Somewhere behind Irene, a man whispered, "Oh, wow," and chuckled.
Heat crawled up Irene's neck. 10 years of moments like this had taught her exactly what her anger cost and what it bought. She breathed in through her nose. Orchids, coffee, the chlorine tang of the waterfall. Her eyes moved with quiet purpose. The lobby clock read 9:07. The chrome sign still leaned across the ramp outside. The black camera above the desk blinked its small red light. She filed each detail away the way she had once filed earnings reports. Neatly. For later, she reached into her folder and produced a cream-colored card. Meridian capital letterhead. Visitor authorization. 30th floor, 9:30 a.m. Walter Brennan's office had couriered it to her on Friday. She laid it on the counter, stretching up to reach. Candace picked the card up with 2 fingers, the way someone lifts a napkin from a stranger's lap. Her eyes never dropped to read it. She turned it over, set it face down on the marble, and patted it twice. "Anyone can print a card," she said. "We had a man last month with a fake badge. Walked right in, stole 3 laptops from the 4th floor. So forgive me if I don't roll out the red carpet for walk-ins." A beat, deliberate. Or roll-ins, I suppose. The associates by the elevator laughed out loud this time. Candace's smile warmed at the sound, a performer finding her audience. Across the lobby, a young woman in a green apron stopped wiping the espresso counter. Tasha Cole had worked Meridian's lobby bar for 3 years. She had watched Candace sort human beings like incoming mail for all 3 of them. Something about the woman in the wheelchair, the stillness of her, made Tasha's stomach knot. She filled a glass with ice water, came around the bar, and crouched beside the wheelchair. "Here you go, ma'am," she said quietly. "It's a long ride in from that cold."
Thank you. Irene took the glass. Her hands were steadier than Tasha expected.
"Tasha," Candace's voice cracked across the lobby like a ruler on a desk. "We don't serve loiterers. Get back to your station before I write you up for the 3rd time this quarter." "She's not a loiterer. She's 3rd time this quarter." Candace let each word fall separately.
Tasha's jaw tightened. She gave Irene an apologetic look and retreated, but she did not go far. She stayed at the end of the bar, watching, her phone half out of her apron pocket. Irene set the water on the counter's lower ledge. "I'd like you to call Walter Brennan's office. They're expecting me." For the first time, something flickered behind Candace's eyes. The chairman's name was not nothing, but 11 years of guarding this desk had taught her a simple arithmetic. The cost of insulting a nobody was 0. And everything about this woman read nobody. "Mr. Brennan," Candace repeated, almost amused. "The chairman of this firm, expecting you." "That's right."
"Let me guess. He met you at one of his little community events, shook your hand, said, 'Come by any time,' and you actually believed it." She shook her head slowly. "Honey, men like that say those things the way other people say, 'bless you.' It doesn't mean you sneeze your way into the boardroom." "Call his office," Irene said. 2 minutes. Then I'll be out of your hair either way." It was reasonable. It was calm. And the reasonableness of it was the most infuriating thing Candace had heard all morning. People like this were supposed to get flustered. They were supposed to apologize and leave. This one just sat there, asking her to do her job, in front of everyone. Candace leaned over the high counter so she could look down at Irene directly.
"I am not bothering the chairman's office because a woman rolled in off the street with a printed card and a story." Her voice dropped, sweet and venomous. Now, you can wheel yourself back out that door, or I can have you removed. Those are the options, sweetheart. You're refusing to make one phone call? I'm protecting this firm. It's my job. A pause. Some of us work for our money. The sentence hung there, shining with everything underneath it. A woman by the sofas inhaled sharply. Even one of the associates stopped grinning. Irene looked at her for a long moment. The waterfall murmured. The chandelier light trembled on the marble between them. Okay, Irene said softly. She slid the cream card back toward herself. I want your name. Excuse me? Your name. For my records. Candace laughed. It was a real laugh, head back, delighted. My name? Oh, that's adorable. Who exactly are you going to report me to? She plucked the gold name bar from her blouse and held it up like a trophy. Candace Pruitt. 2 T's. Make sure you spell it right when you tell whoever is at the top of your little list. Thank you, Irene said. Spelling matters, especially on documents. Something in the way she said documents brushed cold against the back of Candace's neck. She ignored it. Instead, she picked up the desk phone, pressed a button, and turned her face slightly away, voice pitched for the whole lobby anyway. Security to the front desk, please. We have a disturbance. Her eyes slid back to Irene. A woman refusing to leave. She hung up, folded her hands, and smiled the warm professional smile from the brochure. You wanted me to make a phone call, she said. I made one. 30 floors above them, coffee was being poured into china cups for a board meeting set to begin in 20 minutes. Nobody up there had any idea what was happening to their majority shareholder downstairs. By the espresso bar, Tasha Cole's phone was out of her apron now, held low, screen up. And above the front desk, tucked against the ceiling, a small black camera stared down, its red light blinking. Steady. Patient. Recording everything. Dennis Holloway crossed the lobby with the unhurried walk of a man whose worst call in 6 years was a parking dispute. He was big, gray at the temples, with reading glasses tucked into his breast pocket. He took one look at the scene and slowed down. 22 years in the Army had taught him how to stand still. 6 years at Meridian had taught him when not to. He liked this job. Quiet building, decent benefits, a granddaughter who thought his uniform made him a superhero. A woman in a wheelchair sat at the front desk, hands folded in her lap. She did not look like a disturbance. She looked like somebody's church deacon waiting on a ride. He noted the wet wheel tracks, the orderly folder on her lap, the steady eyes. 6 years of reading lobbies told him one thing. Whatever this was, it wasn't trouble. Then Candace started talking. She came around the desk, heels clicking, voice pitched for the cheap seats. This woman has been harassing me for 15 minutes. She's pretending she has a meeting upstairs so she can sneak into the building. She refuses to leave. I want her out. Irene's eyebrows rose. 15 minutes. Harassing. Sneaking. The story grew in front of her like a soap bubble, gaining color and weight with every word. Everyone could see it happening. Almost everyone chose not to. Ma'am. Dennis turned to her, polite, tired. Is that true? No, Irene said. I have a 9:30 appointment with the board on the 30th floor. I asked her to call Walter Brennan's office to confirm. She refused. Dennis glanced at Candace. It was a reasonable request. One call. Don't you dare, Candace snapped. We do not bother the chairman's office for every con artist who rolls in with a sad story. She had a fake card. I've already dealt with it. The card is right here, Irene said. Nobody has read it yet. Dennis reached for it. He was actually reaching for it.
And that was the moment Candace decided the situation needed to move faster.
She stepped between them, snatched the leather folder off Irene's lap, and held it up high. "Let's see what's really in here," she announced, "since we're doing show and tell." "Give that back!" Irene's voice changed, low, flat, the voice of a woman halfway out of patience. Candace shook the folder upside down. Papers burst loose and scattered across the marble like startled birds. Pages skidded under the sofas. A pen rolled against Dennis's boot. The lobby went very quiet.
One page came to rest face up in the middle of the floor. Heavy cream paper, embossed letterhead. Across the top, in bold type, it read, Meridian Capital, Share Transfer Agreement, Confidential. Nobody read it. Nobody ever reads the most important thing in the room. A man in a camel coat, the same one who had stepped over her wheel outside, wandered past the page on his way to the elevators. He glanced down at the word confidential, then at his phone, and kept walking. Some people are extras in every story they enter. Candace tossed the empty folder onto the counter. Junk mail and printouts. Like I said, Irene looked at her papers spread across 60 feet of marble. 10 years of deals had taught her that rage was a currency. Spend it wrong, and you lose everything. So she put her hands on her wheels and began to collect her documents, one by one. She had to lean far over the side of her chair for each page. Reach, strain, grip. Her shoulders, already burning from the ramp, screamed with every stretch. She kept her face smooth. She had stopped letting strangers watch her hurt a long time ago. Every dip of her body was visible to 40 people, and not one of them moved. Except Tasha. The barista was across the lobby in seconds, kneeling, gathering pages. Candace's voice hit her like a thrown glass. Touch one page, and you're fired. Today. I'll write it up as assisting a trespasser. Tasha froze, 2 sheets in her hand, 19 credit hours from her degree, rent due Friday. She looked at Irene. It's all right, Irene told her softly. Put them down.
Tasha set the pages where Irene could reach them. Then, still kneeling, with her back to the desk, she whispered, I texted Lauren, Mr. Brennan's assistant. She buys a chai from me every morning at 9. She always answers. Irene's hands paused on the wheels, just for a breath. Then we wait, she whispered back. Go protect your job. You've done plenty. Candace watched from behind her counter, arms crossed, narrating for her audience. You see this? This performance? They do this. They make a scene, then they call a lawyer. I've seen it 100 times. She lifted her phone, held it sideways, and started recording Irene. For evidence, she said sweetly. Smile for the camera, sweetheart. Your little scam is going in the training manual. She zoomed in on the chair itself. And look at this equipment, you guys. Duct tape on the armrest, mud on the spokes. If you're going to pretend you belong at Meridian, at least rent better props. This is what happens when you're nice in this city, she told her phone audience. You hold the line for a company, and this is the thanks. People will fake anything now. Disabilities, meetings, anything. A few people had their own phones out now, filming Candace, filming Irene. The internet was being assembled, frame by frame, and nobody in the room knew it yet. Dennis shifted his weight. Something about this was starting to itch. He'd seen real con artists. They talked fast. They got loud. They threatened lawsuits in the first 30 seconds. This woman just collected her papers in silence. And her silence was heavier than shouting. His radio crackled on his shoulder. Front desk? Status? Dennis keyed it without taking his eyes off the scene. Handling it, he said, and wished he believed that. Candace, he said quietly,
Maybe I just walk her out, no drama. Or maybe we make the call upstairs. It's one call. Candace lowered the phone and stared at him.
"One call," she repeated. "Dennis, sweetie, do you know what happens if we ring the chairman's office during his board meeting over this? That's both our jobs. Is she worth your pension?" It was a lie wearing a seatbelt. Safe, sensible, impossible to argue with. Dennis's itch lost to his mortgage. He sighed and stepped toward the wheelchair. "Ma'am, I'm going to need you to leave the building. Please don't make this harder." Irene placed the last page in her folder and closed it. She looked up at him, not at Candace, at him. "What's your name?" she asked. "Dennis. Dennis Holloway, ma'am." "Dennis Holloway. I want you to remember that you asked nicely. That's going to matter." Behind the desk, Candace barked a laugh. "Is she threatening you now? Unbelievable! This is exactly what I'm talking about." She came around the counter, phone still in her hand, and planted herself in front of the wheelchair. She dialed 911 and turned the screen toward Irene, thumb hovering over the green button like a detonator. "Last chance, sweetheart. Roll out on your own, or roll out with a police escort. Criminal trespassing. Your choice. I look great in court." The silver-haired woman by the sofas finally spoke. "For heaven's sake, she's not bothering anyone." Candace ignored her. Wealth got smiles at this desk. Conscience got nothing. Irene looked up at the phone, then at the woman holding it. "You will remember this morning for a very long time," she said. There it was again, that cold brush at the back of Candace's neck. She slapped it away with volume. "Out!" She flung her arm toward the doors. "Dennis, now, or I press this button and we do it the embarrassing way." 911. Over a woman with an appointment card. Even the associates by the elevator had stopped laughing now. The lobby held its breath. 40 people, 4 phones recording, one woman in a chair with her folder hugged to her chest. The waterfall kept whispering. The chandelier kept glittering. 30 floors of money stacked silently over a single point of cruelty. Dennis exhaled through his nose. He walked behind the wheelchair. His hands hovered over the push handles. "Don't push my chair," Irene said quietly. "Nobody pushes my chair." "Ma'am, I'm sorry," Dennis said, and his fingers closed around the handles. Across the lobby, the elevator chimed. The doors slid open, and someone began to run. The man running across the lobby was Graham Ellis, Chief Operating Officer of Meridian Capital. 49 years old. 2 decades with the firm. The kind of executive who did not run anywhere, ever. His tie flew over his shoulder. His glasses were clenched in his fist. His face was the color of wet paper, and his voice arrived before he did. "Stop!" The word hit the marble like a dropped tray. Dennis froze, hands still on the chair. "Get your hands off that chair!" Graham's lungs were heaving. "She owns 51% of us!" Silence has a sound. It is the waterfall, suddenly enormous. It is an espresso machine ticking as it cools. It is 40 people inhaling at once and forgetting how to exhale. Candace's phone slipped out of her hand and cracked face down on the marble. Nobody looked at it. Everybody was doing math. 51%. Not a client, not a guest, the owner. The biggest chair at the table belonged to the woman they had tried to roll out the door. Graham reached the desk and bent over, palms on knees, dragging air. Then he straightened, turned to the lobby, and made it official. "Everyone, this is Irene Whitfield, founder of Whitfield Capital, as of last Tuesday, the majority shareholder of this firm. He swallowed. My boss. All of our bosses. Heads swiveled toward Irene like a field of satellite dishes finding a signal. She sat exactly where she had been sitting for the last 40 minutes. Same chair, same blazer, same calm. The only thing that had changed was everyone else. Upstairs, 3 minutes earlier, the morning had detonated quietly. Lauren, the chairman's assistant, had glanced at her phone during coffee service. The text was from the chai girl in the lobby. Front desk is throwing out a black lady in a wheelchair. Says she has a board meeting. Please check. Lauren had pulled up the visitor list, then the share registry. Then she had interrupted Walter Brennan mid-sentence, something no one did, and shown him the screen. Brennan had said 4 words. Get Graham down there. Now Graham crouched beside the wheelchair, lowering himself to eye level. Up close, Irene could see his hand shaking.
Ms. Whitfield, I am so deeply sorry. We had no idea you were coming in early, and... He stopped, heard himself. No, there's no version of this where that sentence helps. No, Irene agreed. There isn't. Her eyes went past him, across the marble, to the sofa by the window. One of my pages is still under there. It traveled the farthest. You can start with that. Graham went down on his knees, in his $3,000 suit, and reached under the sofa in front of 40 witnesses. When he stood up, he was holding a single cream page. He looked at it. He could not help looking at it. Share Transfer Agreement, Meridian Capital Holdings. And there, under Purchaser, in capital letters, Irene Whitfield. He carried it back the way altar boys carry candles, both hands, careful. He placed it on her folder and stepped back. Then, finally, every gaze in the lobby slid to the front desk. Candace had not moved. Her mouth had opened twice and produced nothing. The performer's posture was gone. She looked smaller behind the counter, as if the marble had grown. Ms. Whitfield, her voice came out wrong, an octave too high. I didn't know. Nobody told me. If someone had told me who you were... I know, Irene said. That's the problem. She rolled forward, one push of the wheels, and let the words land in the silence. You didn't need to know who I was. You needed to be decent to a stranger. The first one costs nothing. You couldn't manage either. Candace grabbed for handholds. Sir, she turned to Graham. Sir, she refused to leave. I followed protocol. The security policy clearly states... The policy? Graham's voice was very quiet now. Did the policy tell you to dump her documents on the floor? I watched the cameras on the way down, Candace. There were 4 angles. 4 angles. The phrase moved through the lobby like a draft of cold air. The ceiling camera, the desk camera, the phones. The morning had been recorded from every direction, and every direction looked the same. Dennis stepped away from the wheelchair. His hands came off the handles like they were hot. Ma'am. His voice was rough. I apologize. I should have made the call. It was one call. You should have, Irene said. But you also asked nicely. Both things are true, Dennis Holloway. Both will be remembered. From the espresso bar came a sound nobody could blame her for. Tasha Cole, laughing once into her hand, eyes wet. Graham checked his watch. 9:31. He cleared his throat. Miss Whitfield, the board is upstairs. They are very eager to meet you. I imagine they are. Irene set her folder straight on her lap and turned her chair toward the elevators. Then she paused, mid-turn, and looked back at the desk one last time. Candace. Pruitt. 2 T's. She smiled, without warmth.
Don't go far. Spelling matters, especially on documents. And she rolled toward the executive elevator, wheels whispering over marble, while the lobby parted in front of her like water. The executive elevator was paneled in walnut and smelled like lemon polish. Graham held the door and then stood in the corner like a man riding with a lion. 30th floor, he said. The numbers climbed. Irene watched them and said nothing. She had waited 10 years for rooms like this. She could wait 30 floors. The boardroom doors were already open. 14 people stood when she rolled in. Standing was easy now. Everyone could manage it suddenly.
Walter Brennan came around the table first. Silver hair, golf tan, and this morning an expression somewhere between fury and shame. Irene, he took her hand in both of his. I sold you 51% of a company. I did not know I was selling you a lobby like that. You didn't sell me the lobby, Walter. She rolled past him toward the head of the table. You sold me the right to fix it. The meeting started at 9:36, 6 minutes late. Irene declined coffee. She had one agenda item to add before the deck, she said. Item 0. Pull up the lobby cameras, she said. This morning, 9:05 to 9:31. All 4 angles. Somebody from IT was conferenced in. The wall screen blinked, and for the next several minutes, 14 of the most powerful people in the firm watched their own front desk in silence. They watched the chrome sign blocking the ramp. They watched the card being turned face down. They heard beggars on wheels in crisp lobby audio. They watched the folder shaken empty, and their newest majority shareholder leaning out of her chair to gather pages off the floor while their employees filmed it. Nobody spoke. One director put his hand over his mouth. The general counsel started taking notes with the particular speed of a woman calculating exposure. When the screen went dark, Irene let the silence work for a while. Then she folded her hands. I'm not going to start our partnership with a lecture, she said. The video already gave it. I'll just tell you what happens next. The employee at that desk is suspended as of this hour, pending a formal review. Not fired in anger, reviewed properly. We follow process even for people who don't. Heads nodded around the table. Downstairs, it was already happening. The HR director had slipped out during the footage. By 10:15, Candace Pruitt was sitting in a small beige conference room, a cardboard cup of water in front of her, mascara running. I was following procedure, she kept saying. You're all going to act brand new? We profile people at that desk every day. That is the job. The only difference is this one turned out to be rich. It was the most honest thing she had said all morning. It was also a confession, spoken inside a building where she had just learned the cameras have audio. The HR director wrote it down, word for word. Dennis Holloway was interviewed at 10:40. He did not bring a union rep. He sat down, set his radio on the table, and told the truth about everything. The lady asked for one phone call. I should have made it. Candace told me she'd been harassing her for 15 minutes. That wasn't true. I watched the timeline. Ma'am came in at 9:05, and Candace was on her inside of a minute. Anything else? The HR director asked. Yes. The barista, Tasha. Don't let anything happen to her. She was the only one of us who did the job right. Upstairs, the board moved through the actual agenda. Numbers, transitions, signatures. And then Walter Brennan rose for his final motion as chairman. I plan to hand over operational control in June, he said. I'm moving it up. Effective today. I've spent 40 years building this firm's name. This morning, I watched our lobby spend it like loose change. He looked at Irene. It belongs in better hands. The vote was unanimous. Even the directors, who had privately grumbled about an outsider holding 51%, raised their hands fast. Conviction is flexible when there's footage. At 11:50, Irene rolled back across the lobby on her way out. The chrome sign was gone from the ramp. Someone had moved it in a hurry. It now leaned behind the desk like evidence. Behind the counter sat a nervous temp, and taped to the espresso bar, where Tasha was restocking cups, a handwritten sign read, "Chai on the house today." Irene stopped, ordered one, and tipped $100. "I'll see you soon," she told Tasha. It sounded less like a goodbye and more like a plan. The video went up at 12:20 that afternoon. Not Candace's video. Hers died with her cracked screen, and HR had it in evidence anyway. The one that went up belonged to a college kid who had been waiting in the lobby for a job interview.
41 seconds. It started with the folder being shaken empty. It ended with a man in a suit screaming that the woman on the floor owned 51% of the company. The caption was 5 words. Wait for the last line. By dinner, it had 200,000 views. By Wednesday, 2.3 million. The clip ran on the Chicago Evening News, then the national morning shows, then everywhere.
Strangers slowed the footage down and zoomed in on details. The card placed face down without being read. The duct tape on the armrest of a chair that turned out to belong to a multimillionaire. The chai girl kneeling when nobody else moved. The internet did what it does. It found names fast. But Meridian moved faster, because Meridian now had an owner who knew exactly how these stories go. Irene gave one statement on camera the next morning. No anger, no victory lap. "What happened to me on Monday happens to people every day," she said. "The only unusual part is that this time the woman in the wheelchair owned the building. I'm less interested in punishing one receptionist than in fixing the lobby. Watch what we do next." The formal review took 9 days because Irene insisted it be done properly. What it found was worse than one bad morning. 3 complaints against Candace Pruitt in 5 years, each one quietly buried by a friendly supervisor. A job applicant with a service dog turned away at the desk, told the position was filled. It wasn't. A delivery driver with a stutter she had mimicked to his face. And 14 write-ups against Tasha Cole, every one of them dated within a day of Tasha being kind to somebody Candace had frozen out. The pattern sat in the file like a fingerprint. Candace was terminated for cause on a gray Thursday morning. She cleaned out her desk while the temp watered her orchids. No security escort, no public perp walk. Irene had been specific about that. Process, not spectacle. The consequences arrived anyway, the slow, honest way. The luxury staffing agency that had placed her at Meridian dropped her within the week, after 2 of its biggest clients called asking questions. Front desks run on reputation. Hers now arrived in rooms before she did. She gave an apology 3 weeks later on a podcast when her severance negotiations stalled. She was sorry if anyone was offended. She had been under enormous stress. She was, she said, actually the real victim of a rush to judgment. The internet did not buy it. Neither did the severance board. The clip of her saying, "We profile people at that desk every day," had already been read into the record. Some apologies are doors. Hers was a mirror, and she never managed to look in it. What Irene did next surprised everyone who expected a lawsuit. She had grounds. The general counsel confirmed it in a memo nobody was supposed to see. Discrimination, public humiliation, 4 camera angles. She could have owned Candace Pruitt's future the way she owned the building. She declined. "Suing her gets me a check," she told the board. "I don't need a check.
I need the next woman who rolls into a lobby like mine to be treated like a person. Checks don't do that. Training does. Hiring does. Ramps do. So Meridian announced the First Impressions Initiative, funded with $2 million of the firm's money and chaired by the majority shareholder herself.
Every client-facing employee in the firm retrained.
Not a webinar, real sessions, with real people in wheelchairs, with canes, with service dogs, with accents, with thrift store blazers, sitting across the table, telling their stories. Every entrance audited. The chrome sign policy died the first day. Ramps widened, counters lowered. A section of the famous marble lobby was rebuilt that summer. The new front desk had a low wing where a seated visitor could look a receptionist level in the eye.
And the hiring pledge made the business pages.
Within 1 year, 10% of Meridian's new front-of-house hires would be people with disabilities. Within 3 years, every Meridian office in the country. The program needed a director of guest experience to run the flagship lobby. The job posting might as well have had a name on it.
Tasha Cole stopped making chai in October. She started the new role the same week she finished her degree, at nearly 3 times her old pay. Her first official act was framing a photograph for the wall behind the desk. It showed a glass of ice water sitting on a marble counter. Dennis Holloway kept his job. The review board noted that he had been lied to, that he had asked for the phone call, and that he had told the complete truth afterward, at risk to himself. He became something better than blameless. He became the guy who tells the story. New security hires at Meridian all got the same speech on their first morning. 6 years from now, somebody is going to look harmless and turn out to be the owner. Treat everybody like that's today.
As for the man in the camel coat, the one who stepped over her wheel, the internet found him too. He turned out to be a client. He turned out, shortly afterward, to be a former client. Nobody at Meridian chased him out. The footage just made his firm uncomfortable enough to move their money quietly elsewhere. Karma, Irene noted, did not need her supervision. It just needed cameras.
In December, the city's business journal put her on the cover. Not in the gray blazer, in the armor, charcoal suit, silk blouse, in front of the rebuilt lobby. The headline read, "The owner they tried to throw out." She kept a copy in her office, not framed, in a drawer. She had not done any of it for the cover, but she did allow herself one small ceremony. The chrome sign, the one that had blocked the ramp, never went back to the lobby. Facilities found it leaning in a storage room with a sticky note in the owner's handwriting. Scrap it. Spend the money on salt for the ramp. Spelling matters. So do first impressions. Wealth, it turned out, had an address after all. It had just spent 11 years checking the wrong IDs at the door.
6 months later, on another Monday morning, snow blew in off the lake again.
The lobby of Meridian Capital looked almost the same. Same waterfall, same chandelier, same 40 floors of glass stacked over Wacker Drive. Almost. The ramp outside was wider now, heated so ice never formed, with nothing standing on it but morning light. The new front desk curved low on one side, like an open hand. Behind it sat a receptionist named Joelle, hired through the First Impressions program. Her wheelchair was newer than Irene's. Her smile was real, and it was for everyone. At 9:05, the side door opened, and an old woman came through it slowly, leaning on a cane, snow on her shoulders. Her coat had been mended at the elbow. She looked up at the chandelier the way people look at cathedrals, and for a moment she seemed ready to apologize for being there. Joelle waved her over.
"Good morning. Come get warm. What can we do for you?"
The old woman explained,
apologizing twice that she had an appointment about a small pension account. Very small, she said. Probably not worth anyone's time. It's worth our time, Joelle said, already typing. You're on the list. Can I get you a coffee while you wait? The chai's famous.
2 minutes later, the woman sat by the waterfall, holding a warm cup, melting snow off her boots onto marble that had survived worse. Nobody filmed her. Nobody would have a reason to. 30 floors up, Irene Whitfield watched the lobby feed on the corner of her monitor. She did that some mornings, not checking for problems, just watching the experiment run. Her office had no inspirational posters, just 2 objects on the shelf behind her desk.
A framed photo of a glass of ice water. And a cream-colored visitor card, the one that spent a morning face down on a marble counter, now mounted face up. Permanently. People sometimes asked her if she ever thought about that receptionist. She always gave the same answer. I think about the ramp, she said. People like her exist because buildings like that allow them. I couldn't fix her. I could fix the building.
The deal that made her majority owner had been worth a number the newspapers loved to print. But ask anyone who was in the lobby that Monday what the real headline was, and they won't quote a number. They'll tell you about a woman who was told she didn't belong in a building she already owned. And they'll tell you what she did with that building afterward.
Because the loudest revenge isn't a lawsuit or a firing or a viral clip. It's a wider door. It's a lower counter. It's a stranger with a cane being handed a warm cup before anyone asks what she's worth. Walter Brennan retired to Arizona and sends postcards. Graham Ellis still runs operations and tells the story of the morning he sprinted through his own lobby. He says it was the most important run of his life. Nobody disagrees. Tasha manages the front of house and trains every new hire with one rule taped inside the welcome binder. You will never get in trouble here for kindness. Not on my floor. And Dennis Holloway, 6 months from retirement, still walks his rounds. He stops at the front desk most mornings, just to check the lobby's temperature, he says. It runs warmer these days.
Okay, real talk. It's me, the narrator. I told you this story because I've watched people get sized up in 10 seconds their whole lives. The wheelchair, the old coat, the wrong everything. And the wildest part? The cost of basic respect is $0. 0. Be the Tasha. Always.
So here's my question for you. If you had been standing in that lobby at 9:07 before anyone knew her name, what would you have done? Be honest with yourself. Drop your answer in the comments, because I read them, and the honest ones are always the best ones. If this story hit you somewhere, share it with someone who needs the reminder that you never know who's rolling through the door. And subscribe, because there are more stories like this one, true to life in all the ways that matter, waiting to be told. Until next time, check your lobby and keep the ramp clear.